I stood frozen in my father's old office, staring at my brother Alex as the words left his mouth about restructuring the company and eliminating my position. He slid a document across the desk, our father's desk, with a figure so insultingly low it made my stomach turn. 5 years of 70-hour weeks, of modernizing our family's hardware store from a dying brick-and-mortar into a neighborhood staple, reduced to what amounted to 3 months' salary. When I questioned if this was Veronica's idea, Alex's jaw tightened noticeably. He claimed it was a business decision from the board, meaning him and his wife. I almost laughed at the corporate pretense. Dad had been gone just 6 months, and already they were acting like we were some Fortune 500 company instead of a family business he built from nothing. Alex made it clear, take the offer or fight and make things ugly. With his 60% ownership after Dad's death, we both knew how that would end. So I didn't argue. I simply picked up the pen, signed the document, and walked out of the office my father had built with his own hands. As I passed the front counter, where I'd worked since I was tall enough to reach the register, I overheard Veronica in the break room expressing satisfaction that they could finally run this place properly. I smiled then, not because I was happy, but because I finally understood. This wasn't business. This was personal, and personal I could work with. The next morning, I drove to the empty storefront 3 blocks from Hartwell Hardware, our family store for 27 years, and signed a 5-year lease. The landlord seemed confused when I wrote the check for the security deposit without negotiating. I explained I'd been watching this space for 2 years. Sometimes the universe delivers exactly what you need, exactly when you need it. Updated. Wow, I didn't expect this post to blow up. Thanks for all the support. Several of you asked if I had planned this move before the betrayal. Honestly, no. But I'd been watching this location for a while, knowing it had potential. Have you ever had a door close only to find a better one already open? Growing up in the shadow of Hartwell Hardware was like living inside a clock. Everything had its rhythm, its purpose. My father, James Hartwell, opened the store when I was 3 and Alex was 10. While Alex got the privilege of age, running the register, ordering inventory, making decisions, I got the privilege of watching, learning, and imagining what could be. By 16, I was redesigning the floor layout to maximize product visibility. By 20, I'd convinced Dad to invest in our first computer system, dragging us from paper ledgers into the digital age. Dad often acknowledged our complementary strengths. Alex knew the practical side, while I saw possibilities he didn't. What Dad saw as complementary, Alex interpreted as competition. Things worsened when Alex married Veronica 6 years ago. She came from money, had an MBA from a state college she never let anyone forget about, and looked at our family business like it was a disappointing fixer-upper she'd been saddled with. When Dad got sick 3 years ago, our roles shifted. Alex took over most of the administrative work, while I handled daily operations and customer relationships. I modernized our inventory system, created our first website, and started a weekend workshop series that brought in new customers and revitalized community interest. Every Saturday, the store filled with people learning basic home repairs, furniture restoration, and DIY projects. Revenue increased 32% that year. Dad noticed. The week before he died, he called me into his office and acknowledged my vision. He made me promise to keep pushing forward, even when Alex resisted, acknowledging his son's cautious nature. I promised, not realizing how quickly Alex's caution would transform into something else under Veronica's influence. After the funeral, they began questioning every decision I made. The workshop budget was cut. My proposal for an online ordering system was shelved for review. When I hired Mark, a tech-savvy college grad who'd helped design websites for several local businesses, Veronica found reasons to criticize his work until he was doing basic inventory instead of helping modernize our online presence. The final straw came when I presented my comprehensive expansion plan: delivery services, a customer loyalty program, online ordering with in-store pickup, and virtual consultations for home projects. I'd spent months researching, creating projections, and developing implementation timelines. Alex and Veronica listened silently, then told me they'd take it under advisement. 3 days later, I found the entire proposal in the break room recycling bin, unread after the first page. That night, I called Dad's old friend and attorney, Benjamin, asking for advice. His response was both cynical and illuminating. Did your father ever actually put anything in writing about how the business would transition? He hadn't. Like many family business owners, Dad assumed blood would be thicker than ink on paper. He was wrong. The next day, Alex called me into the office with his restructuring plan. I knew then that fighting would be pointless. Alex held 60% ownership after Dad's death. I held 40%. The math was simple. So instead of fighting, I began planning. The morning after signing away my family legacy, I got to work. First, I contacted Mark, who'd quit Hartwell Hardware 2 weeks earlier after another run-in with Veronica. We met at Carson's Coffee, and within 30 minutes, he was drawing diagrams on napkins and listing off suppliers we could contact. By lunchtime, we had the skeleton of a business plan. By dinner, we had a name: Summit Supply and Solutions. When I explained to Benjamin that this wasn't just hardware but solutions, everything Hartwell was, plus everything Alex and Veronica refused to let it become, he removed his reading glasses, with concern. He observed this would be seen as a declaration of war. I corrected him. This was just good business. The buyout money served as seed capital, but it wasn't enough. I sold my car, liquidated my 401k, and took out a small business loan. Mark brought in 2 friends from his tech program who built our website and e-commerce platform for equity instead of cash. We worked around the clock, sleeping on air mattresses, in the empty storefront, subsisting on coffee and determination. The trickiest part was inventory. I couldn't compete with Hartwell's buying power initially, so we had to be strategic. Instead of trying to stock everything, we focused on quality tools, eco-friendly options, and specialty items Hartwell didn't carry. For standard inventory, we set up a just-in-time ordering system with next-day delivery guarantees. Alex discovered Summit when he walked into my empty storefront unannounced, face flushed with anger. He was incensed about opening a competing business 3 blocks away, calling it sabotage. When I pointed out that he'd pushed me out of our family's legacy, he claimed I could have fought for my place. I reminded him of the reality. His 60% ownership with Veronica made any fight futile. I was simply making my own choice now, just as he had made his 6 months ago. That evening, Veronica called with fake concern, suggesting I come to dinner to discuss a consultant position at Hartwell instead. The transparent attempt to keep me nearby but powerless almost made me laugh. When I declined, she warned me that my little store wouldn't succeed without the experience or connections to make it work. I simply told her to watch me. Summit Supply and Solutions opened on a Saturday morning in October, exactly 3 months after I signed away my stake in Hartwell Hardware. We didn't have a soft opening or a test run. We went all in with a grand opening that featured DIY workshops, free coffee, raffle prizes, and special opening discounts. Mark had leveraged his connections to get us local press coverage, and we'd been building anticipation on social media for weeks. When I unlocked the doors at 8 a.m., there was already a line. By noon, we'd exceeded our projected full-day sales. By closing, we'd nearly cleared out our initial inventory. Among the customers were familiar faces, longtime Hartwell patrons curious about the new store, contractors I'd built relationships with over the years, neighbors who'd attended my workshops. Mrs. Kovalchuk, who'd been coming to Hartwell since before I was born, pulled me aside as she was checking out to tell me my father would be proud. She said this place had his spirit, always moving forward. That night, exhausted but exhilarated, our small team celebrated with pizza and beer on the floor of our nearly empty stockroom. We toasted to Summit and to showing those corporate wannabes how it's done. I raised my bottle to my dad, who taught me that a business is only as good as the community it serves. Over the next 3 months, Summit grew faster than even our most optimistic projections. Our online ordering system allowed customers to place orders for pickup or delivery, something Hartwell still didn't offer. Our weekend workshops expanded to weeknight sessions as well, covering everything from basic plumbing to smart home installation. We hired staff with specialized knowledge who could provide expert advice, not just ring-up purchases. Mark's tech team developed an app that let customers take photos of parts they needed to replace and get instant identification and availability information. We partnered with local contractors to offer referral services for jobs beyond DIY territory. Each innovation expanded our customer base and strengthened our community presence. Meanwhile, Hartwell was struggling. I heard from mutual suppliers that they'd lost several major contractor accounts. Their foot traffic was down, and they'd had to cut hours. 6 months after our opening, they finally launched their own online ordering system, a clunky version of what we'd implemented on day 1. The confrontation I'd been expecting came on a Tuesday morning as I was opening up. Alex was waiting by the front door, looking like he hadn't slept well in weeks. We walked to Carson's Coffee in silence and sat down with our drinks before he finally spoke. He accused me of killing their business. When I emphasized I was simply running my business while he ran his, he claimed I'd taken their customers and ideas. I pointed out that every innovation at Summit was in the proposal he and Veronica had thrown away. I hadn't stolen anything but implemented what they'd rejected. Alex ran a hand through his noticeably grayer hair and admitted they'd made a mistake, but insisted we were still talking about Dad's legacy, a family business of nearly 30 years. I corrected him. It had been family until I wasn't family enough to keep around. Alex seemed genuinely confused, insisting it was just a business decision. When I pointed out the decision was influenced by Veronica, who never thought I belonged, Alex defended her but with less conviction than expected. He tried arguing they were adapting now, but I explained the difference between adapting and merely reacting. After a moment of silence, Alex pushed a folded paper across the table, an offer to buy out Summit and end the competition. I declined without even looking at the offer, explaining Summit wasn't for sale. As I walked away, Alex called after me that this wasn't what Dad would have wanted. I turned back one last time to remind him that Dad wanted the business to thrive and serve the community, and only one of us was making that happen. Updated. Thanks for all the encouraging comments and DMs. Means more than you know. Many of you asked if I'd consider reconciliation with Alex without Veronica in the picture. I honestly don't know. Sometimes bridges don't just burn, they collapse completely. Has anyone successfully rebuilt a relationship with family after a betrayal like this? The fallout from our coffee shop meeting was swift. Within a week, Hartwell Hardware launched an aggressive advertising campaign with deep discounts on items we specialized in. They extended their hours to match ours and hastily announced their own delivery service. It was transparent desperation, and our customers saw right through it. What I hadn't anticipated was Veronica's personal attack. She began contacting our suppliers, suggesting Summit was financially unstable and might not be able to fulfill payment obligations. She reached out to local contractors, offering exclusive deals if they dropped us completely. Some were swayed by history and Hartwell's established name. Most saw the tactics for what they were, a dying business lashing out. The most significant blow came when they hired away one of our most knowledgeable employees, Maria, with an offer she couldn't refuse. Double her salary and a management position. I couldn't match it without compromising our growth plans. When she left, she apologized, tearfully, explaining about her student loans and the substantial offer. I assured her no explanation was necessary. Business is business. What Veronica didn't understand was that Summit's strength wasn't in any one employee or product line. It was in our approach. 2 weeks after Maria left, we hired 2 recent graduates from the local community college's technical program. They brought fresh ideas and enthusiasm that more than compensated for what we'd lost. 9 months after our opening, Summit had expanded into the vacant space next door, doubling our footprint to include a dedicated workshop area and expanded inventory. Our online sales now accounted for 40% of revenue, serving customers well beyond our local area. We'd opened a small satellite location in a neighboring town and were considering a third. Hartwell, meanwhile, continued its decline. The reduced hours, decreasing inventory, and empty parking lot told the story. Mark reported they'd lost their credit line with 2 major suppliers due to late payments. I was organizing a shipment of specialty tools when my phone rang. A real estate agent representing Hartwell Hardware. She explained they'd decided to sell the business and property, and before listing publicly, wanted to know if I'd be interested in making an offer. Alex had suggested I might want to keep it in the family. That evening, I drove past Hartwell Hardware after closing. Through the window, I could see Alex alone at the counter, head in his hands. I almost stopped, almost went in. Instead, I drove to my father's grave and spoke quietly to the stone about broken promises. I didn't feel the vindication I'd expected, just a hollow sadness for the relationship that couldn't be saved and the shared history that would never continue. The next day, I called the real estate agent back to express interest in the building and location, not to continue Hartwell Hardware, but to maintain Summit as Summit. I specified that negotiations should remain professional between attorneys and agents rather than involving Alex and Veronica personally. 2 weeks later, the paperwork was signed. I purchased Hartwell Hardware's building, inventory, and equipment for fair market value, considerably less than what it would have been worth 2 years earlier, but more than they likely could have gotten elsewhere given their financial situation. Alex and Veronica didn't attend the closing. Their lawyer handed me a sealed envelope along with the keys. Inside was a single page of our father's stationery, the kind he used for important correspondence. Alex's note acknowledged he had underestimated me and asked me to take care of Dad's legacy, even with its new name. Beneath his signature was a postscript in different handwriting, Veronica apologizing for her part, admitting that ambition sometimes blinds people to what matters. I folded the note carefully and put it in my wallet, not as a reminder of victory, but as a reminder of cost. 1 year after purchasing Hartwell Hardware, Summit Supply and Solutions occupied both buildings. We'd connected them with an interior walkway, keeping the original Hartwell storefront intact, but updated. I'd preserved the hand-carved wooden sign my father had commissioned when he opened, mounting it prominently in our main entrance with a small plaque explaining its history. I heard that Alex and Veronica had moved to Arizona, where her parents lived. They'd used the proceeds from the sale to start fresh. According to mutual acquaintances, Alex was working for a construction company, not managing, just working. Veronica had found a position teaching business administration at a community college. Sometimes I wondered if the experience had changed them. I hoped so. Mark was now my full partner, having earned his equity through sweat and brilliance. We'd expanded to 5 locations across the state, with plans for more. Our online business had grown to rival our physical stores, and our workshop program had been featured in a national home improvement magazine. Dad's vision of a business that grew with its community had been realized, just not in the way any of us had expected. On the anniversary of our original opening, we held a customer appreciation day. The stores were packed, the workshops overflowing. During a rare quiet moment, an elderly man approached me, examining the old Hartwell sign with interest. He mentioned remembering when James put up the sign, having helped him level it. He described my father as stubborn, wanting everything perfect. When I asked if he knew my father, he confirmed working with him before the store opened. He shared something my father used to say, that he had two sons, one who knew how to run a business, and one who knew how to imagine it. "Looks like you're both," the man observed. I thanked him, too moved to say more. That evening, after everyone had gone, I found myself alone in what had been my father's office. We'd transformed it into a planning room, walls covered with whiteboards, and project timelines. But I'd kept his desk, refinished, restored, but unmistakably his. I sat in his chair, running my hands over the worn wood edges he'd smoothed with decades of the same gesture. Whatever he might have thought of the path taken, I believed he would have approved of where it led, not to bitter division, but to something new and thriving. My phone buzzed with a text from Mark. Final numbers for the day. We broke every record. Boss would be proud. He didn't specify which boss he meant. He didn't need to. Sometimes what looks like an ending is really a beginning. Sometimes being pushed out is really being pushed forward. And sometimes, the best way to honor a legacy isn't to preserve it exactly as it was, but to let it evolve into what it was always meant to become. Updated. It's been incredible sharing this journey with you all. Many asked if I'd ever reconnect with Alex and Veronica. I'm not sure. They sent a gift when our third location opened, so maybe time is healing some wounds. Would you ever be able to forgive family who betrayed you if they seemed truly changed?